traction control off and it just grips. These tyres are not fun.
No, the tyres are fine, you just not got enough power.
Well, that's what we're finding out today. We're finding out exactly how much power my M240i makes. So putting it on the dyno. Now this behind me is my M240i. It's a 6-speed manual and it's combined with the B58 of course. So very shortly, we're going to go to the dyno, we're going to get this thing strapped down and get some power runs first. But before we do, let's talk about what fuel is going to be in the car, what maps we're running, who it's tuned by, and what modifications I have to hopefully get to the 450 horsepower mark. Now, if I can get to around 450 horsepower on this Stage 2 tune, I'll be very, very happy. And that is kind of all the power I want out of this car at the moment. So before we hit the dyno, let's talk about modifications and what this car is tuned by. Now, if we open this up, we're not going to see a lot. We're pretty much going to see a stock engine. Now, this car is running the stock charge pipe. Not so common on these things to break like they were on the previous engine generations like the N55. And pretty much all the bolt-ons you can see are a Venturi air intake. This thing cost me a lot of money, but it's worth every penny. Now, Venturi quotes you can get up to 10 horsepower just by adding this intake itself. Whether this is completely true or not, I don't know. And again, it's very difficult to see, but we haven't got a catalyst downpipe. We're actually running a 200 cell sports cat. It's a 4-inch sports cat, so the flow should be pretty good. And regarding the rest of the exhaust, let's just say it's not very restrictive at all. And regarding modifications, that's pretty much it. We've still got a stock charge cooling system and obviously the cooler that's on the front for that. Don't have to worry about an intercooler because this engine is charge cooled. And that's as far as modifications in the engine bay go. Next thing, of course, would be to upgrade this stock high pressure fuel pump to the TU one, which can obviously unleash that horsepower even more. Now, here's the important part. It's all good having those modifications. And if I went on the dyno with just those modifications, I would have an increased horsepower from the stock factory figure that BMW quote. However, this thing is where the power comes. This is my MHD adapter and this is what the car is tuned with. We're running a Stage 2 OTS tune with MHD. Now, this car is mapped with the super license, so on the day I was able to measure intake air temperatures, oil pressure and everything like that when it was on the dyno. And just there is actually the dyno printout showing you guys what power this car made. Now, before we play the clips on the dyno, I think it makes sense for you guys to hear this air intake. So listen to this thing, let me know what you think about it. Now, here's another thing we should talk about, and that is fueling. Now, here in the UK, the highest fuel that we can get from the pump is 99 octane. Now, what I use here in the UK is Tesco Momentum. That's a 99 octane fuel, and it's what I've been running in all my cars for a very long time, and I've had no issues. So that's what we're going to be running in this car to do these pulls. It's just the type of fuel I always go for, and I trust it. So I think now that you guys know all the bolt-ons and what this car is tuned by, I think it's time that we actually play the dyno clips. We hear this thing on the dyno and see how loud this B58 is going to sound, because I think it's going to be loud. Not as loud as my N55, but I have a feeling it's going to be pretty loud on the day. So without any further ado, let's get this thing on the dyno, let's play the clips, and while you guys are watching the pulls, I want you to let me know what you think the result is going to be in the comment section below. Got the coffees, Josh is here, literally ready, so just waiting for a car to finish up on a Stage 1 tune, and then we're going to get my car on for the dyno run pulls. So loud, it's ridiculous. It's so loud. It's not as loud as a 235, but it sounds a better tone. It's not as ridiculous. You can smell rubber.
I'd be squatting on the back a little bit.
It squats loads, but that's loud. Well, here I am driving around town after getting a dyno run, and who do I spot in the Polo GTI? My missus. There were the pulls. We did a lot more off camera. A lot of the time we had to actually just let the fans run a little bit, let the air intake temperatures drop down, and then obviously do a couple more runs again. So obviously I was measuring all of this on the MHD live data screen. Now, here's one thing to consider. I'm doing this test basically as we're approaching winter. When I took the N55 to the same dyno, that was done midsummer. So obviously the ambient air temperatures were a lot higher, which obviously brought the air intake temperatures a lot higher as well. What I'm going to do now is just play a quick clip of my M235i with the N55 on the same dyno, and I want you guys to comment below which engine sounded better or louder. Was it the N55 or was it the B58? Now I think it's time to talk about what you guys all clicked on this video to see, and that is the power figure. Before we go over both of them, because they actually did this on 2 different maps, let me just explain something about fueling real quick. So like I mentioned, the fuel that we ran the car on was 99 octane. We did a run on an MHD on the stage 2 tune, but for 95 octane and also 98 octane. So the reason I did a 95 octane is just to cater for any issues with the fuel if it wasn't as high octane as they were advertising, to see what power that would make, and then obviously the 98 octane map. So now that that is cleared up and you guys know which map is which, let's talk about the 2 ones and see which power it made. And here we go. Here is the first run. Now you may be thinking, 360 horsepower, that's not very good considering these cars make 335 out of the factory. Well, this is wheel horsepower. I got a lot of feedback from when I put my N55 on the dyno. That made 432 at the crank, and a lot of viewers wanted to see what the cars were actually going to make in wheel horsepower. So when I did the B58 and we put this thing on the dyno, I decided to get all the figures done in wheel horsepower because that is the true measurement for horsepower. Apparently, here in the UK we go off fly and crank horsepower, but Americans like wheel horsepower. So let me know in the comments below what you think is best. Either way, 360 wheel horsepower is pretty good if you ask me. Here's the graph. You can see where it kind of peaked out. Now this was on the 95 octane map, so not as high as I was hoping on this one. I thought this one would be more than the other one, but now that you guys have seen this one, let's now work out what this is in crank horsepower. As we know what it is in wheel, so let's work out what it says in crank. Now here's how I work out from wheel horsepower to crank horsepower for anybody curious. What I do is I use a base figure of 15% drivetrain loss. So let's just very quickly talk about what that means. As you guys can see in here, this car is a 6-speed manual. Now from the crank, that engine horsepower has to go through a gearbox. As you guys can see, it goes through the prop shaft and it goes all the way through the diff to the wheels. Now because all of that horsepower goes through all of those different components, it loses horsepower as it goes through all of them. Now it's not 100% confirmed if the M240i loses 15%. This is just kind of a roundabout number that I've rounded it off to be. If anybody knows any more information about it, let me know in the comment section. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 360.4 and then plus 15%, and that should be roughly what the crank horsepower is on this car. Now, according to my maths, that should be 414 horsepower, 0.4. Now, that's pretty good for that type of fuel on a stage 2 run. I've seen a lot of people get that on a stage 1. However, different dynos are different. You sometimes get happy dynos. I might have been on a sad dyno. Who knows? Now it's time to talk about then the stage 2 tune, but with the 98 octane map selected with 99 in the tank. What did that make wheel horsepower? Once we've seen that, we'll convert it to fly horsepower or crank horsepower and see what that is. So we can now get rid of this one and we can talk about the second graph, which was the other power run, and this one made 386 horsepower to the wheels. And here's the 2 graphs compared to each other. You can see the differences where it kind of spikes and the horsepower becomes a lot more apparent quicker, but obviously it seems to drop a lot quicker as well, which is something to consider. I'm no professional looking at these graphs. Just anybody has any more info, I'd love to hear it. But we don't need this one anymore. Let's talk about this one. So then, let's take the 386 horsepower, let's plus the 15% for the drivetrain loss and see what this is making at the crank. Now again, according to my maths, that is 443.9, so 444 horsepower at the crank. That's pretty good if you ask me. I said at the beginning of this video I'd be happy for anywhere around the 450 horsepower mark, and I'm pretty happy with that. That's definitely all the horsepower I want to be pushing in this car currently, especially as the car still has an open diff. An LSD is on the cards and it's definitely something for the future, but I wouldn't want to go any more horsepower until I've got an LSD on the car. And if you've been following the channel for a long time, you'll know that I don't just do dyno runs. I've had suspension work on this car carried out as well as all the brakes, so an LSD is definitely something to kind of up this car to the next level. But there we have it. There's the 2 graphs and I'm very happy with them. So, did this car make the horsepower you guys were thinking, or was it a little bit underwhelming and it didn't make as much as you thought it was going to make? Well, to me, like I said, that's all the horsepower I would ever want out of this car currently. I'm very, very lucky to be able to obtain the fuel that I can drive this car with in the UK. I know a lot of American viewers don't get to have high octane fuel like we do in the UK, which is not something I want to live with. Now, here's one thing to consider. When I bought this car, it was tuned by Venturi, and I will just say on the iDrive screen, which we all know is not accurate at all, because on the day, the iDrive screen was going up to 480 horsepower, and we know that that's not true because the car didn't make 480 horsepower. But this car did have a custom tune on it, and this was put on a dyno, and it had road tests as well as they were mapping it. So I imagine the tune that this car came with was a lot more powerful than the tune it's running now. The only downside to it was whoever mapped it, they decided that when it was in sport mode, it would have these crazy obnoxious pop and bangs or overrun the entire time, and I hated it. So I had to get MHD to remove that and tune it a different way because I couldn't be driving in sport mode and it just popping and banging all the time. I looked like an idiot. But for sure, custom tunes are going to be way better and you can squeeze just that little bit more horsepower out of the car from them. Next thing for this though will definitely be a high pressure fuel pump if we want to chase more horsepower. But for now, an LSD is definitely on the cards before we go any further into that horsepower range. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. This is what my car made. But that's going to be a wrap for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, you can give it a thumbs up. You can also subscribe so you don't miss any more content on this car. And apart from that, thank you guys so much for watching. Bye for now.